Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at BTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at the current political situation of the country in light of the upcoming elections on the 8th of February 2024. And despite all the reports coming in of possible delays in elections, it seems that everything has been put to bay, with the ECB, of course, moving ahead as per the schedule, and the Supreme Court also putting an end to a lot of issues with regards to delimitations, the use of ROs from the executive, and of course other such hindrances that could possibly have delayed the elections. We also know that the nomination paper submission is also underway with the deadline of 22nd of December, which is tomorrow. Proceeding forward, of course, it's going to be finalized by 30th of December, and so of course we're going to move on in our next year, proceeding as per the schedule with the elections in early Feb. This is important given the current circumstances of the country and the way that different political parties seem to be reacting, calling for level playing fields, particularly coming in from the PPP and PTI with regards to what is going on and whether or not certain parties are being treated unfairly by certain quarters. And so this is going to be something that is interesting in terms of the kind of campaigns that are being run out and the way that different nomination papers will be emerging from these different political parties, including many of them which have already come to light. So we're going to be taking a look at how this will eventually pan out and what sort of issues need to be of concern when we talk about elections. The timing, of course, has been one that has been quite the focus of many discussions, but now it seems that fairness of the process is another one that's coming up in the discussions that needs to be a center point, especially in terms of the conduct of free and fair elections. That, of course, is the emphasis every time. And so we're going to be taking a look at all of this also in light of the Supreme Court talking about how the timely execution and conduct of elections is far more important than the issue of delimitation of constituencies, which is a matter they say can be dealt with post-elections. What kind of obstacles and nuances does that raise, of course, is going to be another point of discussion in our show. And then we're going to be taking away that a look at the way the different political parties are campaigning for the voters and whether or not, whatever the results are, we will be seeing a strong government by any political party with the strength of the voter base backing them in terms of these difficult political and economic times. So that is going to be the focus of our show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal. We've also been joined online by our guest, Barrister Safi, who is a political analyst and legal expert, and we will be joined by Chairperson FAFEN, Mossarat Qadeem, shortly as well. So we're going to be taking a look at what is going on, especially with regards to what's happening. And Ms. Mossarat, are you with us?
I'm, of course, here with you.
Right, great. Welcome to the debate. We've been joined by Chairperson FAFEN, Mossarat Qadeem. And I'll start with you, madam, because given the current situation, it's important, of course, to have your feedback with regards to the issue of a fair process and moving towards credible elections. Of course, like I said earlier, time has been an issue at the forefront, but right now it seems a lot of the issues, potential issues with the timely conduct of elections are no longer the center point, and the fairness of the elections is an important one. But in terms of what has been happening so far and what needs to happen prior to the elections, how do you see the current process, and where do you think these issues of possible unfairness are stemming from? What is it in the procedures? What is it in the actions so far taken by the ECB that can possibly point towards unfairness in the elections? Are there any that FAFEN has pointed out or can point out?
So far, I think ECB has been doing well. And I think the most important, and for us, I think the most important one is the gap between the male and the female registration that I think ECB has taken the lead in, or I think organizations like FAFEN, I mean, the network has contributed immensely to the the registration of voters. So I think that's one of the things we must appreciate and we must recognize. The other thing is, I think so far it is going on well. The only thing is that we feel when the parties campaign, different political parties are campaigning about the level playing field, that the time will, of course, tell how it is going to, will move in the coming days or so, because the criteria for the transparent and credible election is right now, whatever the criteria is, it is the time that we all should be assessing, observing, and then analyzing whether it is transparent and fair or not, because it starts from here, right from the nominations up to the election result.
Right, absolutely. We were also discussing the process of getting these nomination papers, and then, of course, the scrutiny moving forward and the role of ROs and DROs in this matter. And so when we talk about ensuring transparency and not having any biases when it comes to these nomination papers, can you help us understand how exactly is that process carried out? Just yesterday, we also had another representative of FAFEN outlining how the checklist at this stage is only administrative in terms of the acceptance of nomination papers. And so how do we eliminate the possible biases emerging from ROs in the process?
Sorry, I'm trying to comprehend your question. You are on the one hand, you are asking about the nomination papers, the scrutiny of the nomination paper, and on the other, you are talking about the role of the ROs.
Right. So my question is, when the nomination papers are accepted and the ECP scrutinizes them, how do we eliminate the role of how do we eliminate the biases in the role of ROs in the scrutiny of the nomination papers?
Naturally, I think there are two ways. One is on the individual who is going to be, I mean, the RO as an individual, and the biases may come. But then it is all the institutional process that has to be made credible through the transparency procedure that it adopts. So naturally, I think ECP would never like to compromise on its credibility, and I think we should expect that the ROs are definitely going to be very responsible when it comes to the conduct of their responsibility. So this is what I can say so far.
Right. No, I understand that is, of course, the expectation that one can have from the ROs and the institution. My question is there anything that we can do in terms of adding in the process or ensuring that that actually does happen? Because right now, what you've also said, or what we're saying, is then just a hopeful way of looking at things. How is it that we can actually ensure that? What is it that the ECP does to ensure that the individuals that are there are actually going to be doing their job sincerely?
So, like you just said, actually, it is the Form 31 that it's the RO will issue the list of nominated candidates. This is Form 31 on December 23rd. Following that Form 31, ROs will then scrutinize the candidates' nomination, I think, until December 30th. So, like you also mentioned, I think that some parties are asking the ECP to amend the schedule and give more time for filling nomination papers. This is what I think ECP we have been emphasizing on the following objective criteria during the scrutiny of nominated candidates. This process should not become a judicial exercise, but more like checking compliance with very specific and objective criteria as it is mentioned in the Constitution and in the Election Act, while avoiding subjective interpretation and application of these provisions. So I think this is very important that we have already been emphasizing on the objective criteria during the scrutiny of the nominated candidates. And also I think there is one more thing which is very important, that the candidates of all parties and the segments of society, including women, transgender, and PWDs, should be dealt in the same manner to ensure their equality before the law as it is enshrined in Article 25 of the Constitution. And this one more thing I think I really would like to put here, that the non-Muslim candidates on the reserves, they have to come to the federal capital. This is, I think, discrimination, and same is the case with the women the women on reserve seats, that they have to go to the provincial capital for their nomination. I think it should be this is discrimination in the sense that at least they should be dealt with in the respective districts, so that to avoid the travel of the female the long distance travel for the women candidates on reserve seats.
That is a great answer. Let me also ask you a question regarding FAFAN's own role when it comes to monitoring the elections. I have actually covered their coverage of the election for many years, many times. I just wanted you to actually comment on the fact that FAFAN and other such bodies actually monitor elections, and they also focus on procedures when the elections are taking place and afterwards. But is there a method or way to, gauge the atmospherics, so to speak, before elections, pre-poll, situation? There might not be any pressure that somebody might not be, somebody's arm might not be twisted to actually, join one party or the other.
Sure. I'm just going to give you a little overview of our working. We are observing pre-election processes with 300 long-term observers, and we will be observing the election day processes with 6,000 election day observers. Now, the ones who are actually now in the field and observing the long-term, covering the long-term, this observation, they are going to do the following. They are going to actually observe nomination and scrutiny of candidates in each district, election campaign by the candidates in their constituencies, assessment of electoral transparency, restrictions on women and minorities if there are any, and then the stakeholders' perceptions about quality of electoral preparedness, level playing field, etc. And then voters' intention to vote and level of electoral comprehension. This is what actually we are going to observe before the elections, and they are already in the field. We have deployed 300 long-term observers, and they are. This is how we consolidate the first-hand information in the form of the data, which can be verified as well. And we are definitely, on weekly basis we'll be developing the report on the basis of the data that we collect from 300 observers.
Right, absolutely. Madam, just stay with us, and I'll come back to you with a few more questions regarding your opinion on a few matters. But let me also welcome in the conversation Barrister Safi Ghauri, who's also joined us online. Safi, when we take a look at the current situation, particularly in terms of the questions of fairness, I also want your angle in terms of the way that the political elements are involved, and of course the way that the Supreme Court is also involved in a number of decisions affecting the electoral process, including the question of ROs that was raised, and now of course the question of delimitations as well that has been pushed post-elections, and then at the same time, of course, with the different political parties, especially the PTI and PPP, earlier talking about level playing field. So how do you see all of this in when we say that the process is continuing in a good way and that the ECP is doing its job well? How does that factor in these conversations?
As long as I've been born and as long as I've been seeing elections, I've always seen the same thing over and over again. People crying hue about how the elections that are taking place are about to be unfair. When the election results come out, then everybody decries them and calls them unfair. I have in my life never experienced a Pakistani politician gracefully admitting defeat, stating that they have lost elections fairly, and wishing the winner of the elections good luck to continue with the government. That's never happened. We have observed this in a lot of other other democracies, but never in Pakistan, which is why Pakistan is a transient democracy, as the Prime Minister pointed out yesterday. Now, when it comes to the electoral process, we can be sure that no matter what happens, there will be political parties who will continue to say that the elections are unfair. When the results come out, they will continue to berate them as being unfair. There are impartial observers like FAFEN who can comment better on what the fairness of the elections were. But at this point of time, I think that the constitutional right that has been that the Pakistani public wanted for a very, very long time, which is the elections to take place, is finally taking place. We know that the Chief of Army Staff has said so. We know the Chief Justice has said so. The Prime Minister had said so. And it's very, very important to state something here, which is that the same people who are now saying that the elections are going to be unfair were the people who were just a few weeks ago, even a couple of days ago, saying that elections will not take place, saying that the elections will get delayed, that there will be no elections, Pakistanis will be deprived of the constitutional right. So we know for a fact that now that the right is being given, now that it has been confirmed from all angles that the elections are taking place, they have problems. Naturally, one thing that I want to point out is that there will be problems. It's inevitable that there will be problems. Pakistan has had a lot of problems, and that is why we have had a series of changes in our legislation as well. The Election Act 2017 is one of the latest in a series of 7 acts that were passed for elections. And even right now, there are several other acts that also apply, such as the Representation of People's Act, the Political Parties Act, and also the Conduct of General Elections Act 2002. Now, all of these laws, when read together, make elections a little bit more complicated than they ought to be. That's one thing. But also, we now know for a fact that our electoral laws are very up to date and in line with what modern electoral laws are. So, for instance, in Pakistan, the ECP is empowered to carry on biometric verifications. It's empowered to carry out online elections, to have overseas elections for overseas Pakistanis. And it has been given these different powers which it can exercise. The spending limits have also been raised to 4 million for the National Assembly, 2 million for the Provincial Assembly. And that's great for the candidates. And the most important aspect of, you were asking this question a little while ago about the fairness of the elections. The Elections Act 2017 had something new, which is the formation of election tribunals. So now if anybody has a problem with the way elections are being conducted, with the appointment of a particular returning officer, with anything that might be happening, they have the right to file a petition in the election tribunal, and the election tribunal is time bound by 45 days to give an order on that particular matter. So, for instance, now if there is an objection on a particular RO, a petition can be filed, and with 45 days, right now there's still lesser time than 45 days to the elections. So, I think the Election Commission and the election tribunals that are formed would try their best to try and answer those matters as quickly as possible so that the matters can be resolved. Now, this is not to say that matters will be resolved to the 100% satisfaction of any particular candidate who files such a petition, but that is exactly what I'm trying to say here. What was something that we keep forgetting, and I really want to emphasize this at this stage. We compare our democratic and electoral processes with those of the West. It is extremely difficult to carry out elections in a country that is as big as Pakistan, a population of 250 million. In some places, it's also a very large country area-wise, and the election commission itself is, I would say, largely underfunded. And it is a relatively new organization. As we said that, it was given new powers in 2017. So it doesn't have a lot of experience in carrying out a lot of elections either. So there will be mistakes. Let's have no sort of impressions that elections will be 100% fair and free, that everyone's going to go back hunky-dory. That's not going to happen. But we need to understand that Pakistan is going through a series of transitions. And in the series of transitions, these things are bound to happen. We cannot compare ourselves every time with the US, with the UK, which have an electoral history of 300 years, which have a much higher budget, and which have a democratic public as well. We need to understand that we as people are not quite democratic as yet either, and we don't fully understand how democracy works. So I think all in good time, and things are happening in a positive manner.
Right, absolutely. And Faisal, while we talk about the ECP, of course, in our conversations of elections being fair, I'm not really sure if that's actually the institution or body towards which the criticism of lack of level playing field is being pointed towards, especially by political parties. Isn't that a different institution altogether, which is being cited in the entire process and being given as the reason why there isn't a level playing field? So what do we do with those conversations by those political parties?
Yeah, Sada, when it comes to level playing field, obviously we are seeing that certain political parties, they are chanting about not being provided with a level playing field. They have their own concerns related to it, and one thing is for sure that one major party, PTI, which on ground, of course, as it is evident that they have the ground support when it comes to votes, they have the voters already waiting for voting for them. So when it comes to that party,
you've
How do you
been
know that?
questioned. Yes, you've been questioned
PTI,
before.
when it comes
Yesterday, there was an opinion poll in Punjab, in Lahore, and they said PMLN is going to win.
Well, but that is obviously need to be probed into.
No,
because
we have to have data, right?
We're actually probing into your statement, Faisal. How did you come up with that statement?
Well, I am coming up with these kind of statements because BBC conducted a survey when we talk about
when
around 4 months ago, Farrukh, and we did discuss it before.
What was the sample size? BBC?
Yeah, BBC did it. BBC Urdu did it, and BBC Urdu highlighted it as well in their news. And if we talk about certain survey being conducted by Pakistan, as well as the news portals as well on social media as well, they are claiming that they have the vote. They have the vote on the ground. I'm not saying that somebody's got 80% or somebody's
has
got 20%.
the loudest voice. That's why.
What I'm trying to say, Farrukh, what I'm trying to say is that they have the vote bank, and that vote bank largely is of obviously the youth, and youth is seeing on on social media everywhere. It is seeable, and that is why they are being more expressive as well. What I'm trying to say is PTI is coming up with the allegations of not being provided with the level playing field. One of the reasons might be that few of the names, few of the leaders, few of the local leaders on the grassroots level, of course, they were found involved, or they are being suspected of being involved in 9th May, and that is why they are being targeted, and that's why when they are being targeted, it is being perceived as if one of the parties is not being provided with the level playing field. When it comes to People's Party has different kind of allegations. What People's Party is maintaining that there is one certain party called PMLN that is being edged in terms of making the alliances when it comes to Balochistan, when it comes to urban Sindh, when it comes to KPK. They have been successful in arrangements, in sort of alignments with the other local parties, and People's Party feels as if them political parties, the local political parties, of course they have a large vote bank on the ground, and if one big party gets alignment with that party, of course it is a favorable situation for them. So People's Party claims that they are not being given the right ground for it for the elections, and when it comes to PTI, they have the different ones. I mean, even if we talk about today, I have been going through few of the statements from both People's Party as well as the PTI. The PTI has been claiming that their candidates, they are not being allowed to put their papers through submission process in different constituencies. Well, everyone would be having their own reasons for not being allowed to do that, because they have been somewhere down the line. Maybe they are involved, or maybe they are being probed for 9th May, and that is why they are not being done for. If we talk about few of their senior people, senior leaderships, few senior names who've been always being associated with PTI in recent past, I'm talking about Etizaz Ahsan Saab. He's being said that he's getting into elections. When we talk about Khosa Saab, a senior lawyer,
he joined a party.
He joined the party. In his papers, they have been
not the party, our party, PTI.
Yeah, PTI. He did. And what has happened is their papers, obviously, they are being submitted without any hindrances. It shows that the system is in place. If somebody is not involved in 9th May, their papers are being submitted. But if somebody is involved, then of course their papers won't be involved, because they have to go through a process of probing against their, inciting violence on that certain day.
Okay. Okay. Let me actually, Farrukh, with your help, put things in perspective, because I want to understand really in terms of where we stand today, what is the most important question that we really want to address. There is, of course, the issue of the ECP and its procedures. There is the role of the Supreme Court with its decisions. There is, of course, the military and establishment that is being accused by different political parties as favoring one party or the other. There are the political parties themselves who are, of course, behaving in certain ways. And then there's, of course, the voters and the people of Pakistan for which the elections are taking place predominantly. That's what's, of course, the most fundamental part. But we don't really see them or their aspirations being involved in this entire process? And how exactly is it then that we're coming to the conclusion or deciding on what factors who actually will form the next government? So what really is the issue that we should really be focusing on?
Thank you, Sana. Actually, your question actually rescued me from a situation which was totally counterintuitive. The more I interrupt Faisal, the lesser time I get later on in the answer. So thank you very much for rescuing me from that. But I just wanted to actually point out the biggest question, Sana, and I just brought up a survey, a poll of Lahore's constituencies yesterday. You know, the biggest question that was actually that the lead that was buried somehow in the title and all, and that was that 80 plus percent people think that they have not yet been approached by a political party. So biggest challenge to the electoral process is not a pre-poll rigging, anything that might happen on the election day, because there are still checks and balances, but it is incompetence of political parties themselves. Let me just point out one thing that we have been actually discussing repeatedly for past 2-3 months, and that is manifestos. PMLN 2 months ago actually promised that within a month they are going to come up with a manifesto. They formed a humongous manifesto committee. Where's the manifesto, right? PTI keeps on talking about everything. Come on, let me just very humbly say this idea of playing the victimhood card will not actually be useful, because there is far bigger victims. There are far bigger victims that are sitting. Are you going to beat People's Party at victimhood, or for that matter ANP, for that matter in the victimhood department? That is not possible. People's Party has been losing and losing for past 25 years, and that shows. For example, in 2002, it came very close to forming the government, but then it's because the state was against it, half of the party or 1/4 of the party was carved out as a cake piece and given to the ruling coalition. Similarly, in 2008, they lost their leader, Sana. She was killed. All these parties that keep on talking about their victimhood, their leaders are, mashallah, alive, and they are part of the country right now, right? People's Party's leader was assassinated in 2008. Then in 2013, what we saw is called shaking of the matchbox. If there's a victim whose house burned down, and then merely you just shake the matchbox in front of them, all of a sudden their trauma kicks in. Remember, TTP actually declared People's Party and ANP as their targets in 2013 election. Then in 2018, it wasn't PMLN's candidates which were sifted out of the party and sent to PTI. It was People's Party. So are you going to beat them in victimhood? You have to actually come up with manifesto, right? Manifestos and programs are the things that are going to define who you are and what you are going to do. That hasn't happened. Now, let me also talk about filter bubble, or what is called confirmation bias. Yesterday, Faisal was talking about how awesome it was that AI was used in PTI. So I went back and I watched the whole thing again just to confirm whether we were watching the same thing or different. And I was surprised that software that was used could not, they did start with a strong note. They copied Imran Khan Saab's opening statement or his visual and his voice, but then what happens? The pronunciation changes. The software is perhaps was Hindi dominated because they couldn't pronounce ghan, and it became gaf. Continuously, gadar is gadar, and similar kind of thing. So that was there. But listen to PTI. They'll keep on telling you that how successful and how awesome this thing is, right? So there is a confirmation bias. Everybody keeps on relying on that. My humble submission is I am entering these elections with an open mind. I'm a voter. I have been a voter, but I have no bias against or in favor of any political party. but beware of inhaling your own propaganda. Even when PMLN was defeated in by-elections by PTI, at that time also the worst performance of PMLN was not bad enough. So you have to remember that all these parties have their vote banks. If you are going to think that you're just going to walk over, that is not going to happen. Don't give me assumptions based on headlines of papers, media's bias, or for that matter, all these online polls, because they don't mean nothing.
Right. Ms. Mossarat, I want to also take your perspective, especially with regards to the conversation of how relevant these elections are to the general public. Because when we talk about the voter base, we keep on talking about how one party or the other has the mandate, or one party or the other has so many followers. But how, in your opinion, as Chairperson FAFEN, how relevant are the elections at the moment in terms of the general population in Pakistan? Of course, the turnout of the elections is extremely important. Are we expecting a huge turnout? Do we know that the elections in itself are meaningful to the people, that they care what the outcome is? Either way, they are entrusting the responsibility that is there on the caretaker setup and the ECP, and they find that whatever the results are in fact credible?
Definitely. I think when it comes to election, they are always relevant to the citizens. And because, particularly in our context, people have been, I think they are now fed up of this fluid political situation and this uncertainty that has been, like, the fate of Pakistani nation for the last, I think, 1.5 years. So people are, they are very hopeful that this election definitely will bring in some positive transformation.
Right. My question is actually whether or not the general person believes that their vote matters.
Oh, that's it. I think, in the context of Pakistan, when we do, because we work at different levels, particularly at the grassroots level, you are talking about the perception of a common person. The common person thinks that if, yes, the right candidate is there, he or she will vote for the person. Now, this is the question that they have been asking us. When we ask them to go for vote, register their vote, then they said, okay, whom should we vote? This is a question that they have been asking, I think, many of us who are working on the ground. We have no answer to that. So I think the right or the relevant candidate that they are expecting, that they are looking for, if they are there, they're definitely going to vote for it. That's what this is my, I think, analysis and assessment on the ground.
Okay,
so people,
and how
by
much?
and large, and
Okay.
I'll just give you an example, by and large, the people, I think they're really looking forward to these elections. Now, it depends on every one of us, especially on the key stakeholders, how we keep up that momentum, how we actually, if they are mobilized, that they are motivated, then I think that momentum, that mobilization, that motivation, keeping it up is the responsibility of many of us, including the institutions and the civil society and the media and every one of us.
Right.
I hope
Okay.
I have answered
Can you
your question.
also help me
But I
understand?
wanted to give you the common perception that the people
Right,
are
go
fed
ahead.
up of the uncertain situation. The people really want to go for political stability, and with the political stability, they expect that economic situation will definitely change, and that will be positive change. And this is what the people are looking for. So whoever comes into power, the people will be expecting a lot from the new government.
Okay. Can you also help me understand, when we talk about the common person and the question with regards to who it is that they vote for, what exactly is their evaluation criteria? How do they actually come to this decision as to who to really vote for? Is it just an alliance with a certain political party, or being a worker or a follower, or being wooed by the kind of public rallies that we see? Or is it actual work done on ground, especially with regards to different areas and districts that we see? Do the people actually care what the person has done, or what the person's credibility is in terms of his actions prior to contesting elections?
I think before me, Faisal said just one thing very beautiful, that we don't have that democratic culture yet established in Pakistan. And the second thing was Farrukh. I think it was Farrukh Saab because I can't see anyone, so I just am like, assuming that I'm taking the right name. He just said that these polls, he doesn't believe in them. I think both of them are correct. When it comes to, and your question is, I think I'll try to answer it in few sentences.
Okay.
See, it depends from city, from village to village to city and province to province. So in some provinces, as you know, there is the clan politics going on, for generations, and they are the winners. They have the winning seats, and everybody knows that this constituency belongs to that, and you have to vote for them. But now, alhamdulillah, I believe that in Pakistan, people have become quite independent in their choices. And when it comes to the election, people now can just tell whom to vote and why to vote. This is important, and I think this education that has taken place over a period of time to give them the difference between the right and the wrong choice, I think has really given them I think have developed their critical thinking and their analytical skills whom to vote. But I just said, some people said we don't have a choice and we have to vote for a particular candidate. But others, they do say that yes, we know whom to vote. And it all depends which age group we are talking to. I'll give you the example of my own area, that is Tasfadda. Earlier, when you would just go there, in the previous elections, they would just take the name of two parties only. I'm not going to take the name of those parties, but now when you go there, the popular vote is for just one party, and all those parties have been replaced by one party. I'm not going to take the name of any party, but what I'm saying is people feel that they expect a lot from someone who can deliver. And this is what they are looking for in the coming elections. They are looking for a candidate who can just whatever he or she promises, later on, of course, he or she stand by that promise, abide by the promise, I think. This is what these people are looking for. They have become, I think, very realistic in their approach.
All right. Thank you very much, Chairperson FAFEN, Ms. Mossarat Qadeem, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. Barrister Safi, I also like your perspective, especially in terms of the way that different political parties now are going to be putting up their candidates for the contest of elections in different constituencies. Which areas do you think will be the hot battlegrounds, and what sort of political aspects will we be considering in the upcoming days in terms of rallies and frictions that already exist turn in terms of the candidates in those constituencies, and whether or not there's going to be any areas in which there's going to be a neck-to-neck competition?
Thank you. It's very interesting. I think there are going to be a lot of areas this time around that are going to have absolutely neck-to-neck competitions. Now, historically, we've always seen the bigger cities, Islamabad, Lahore, some seats in Karachi having more competition than others. The reason why we say that is because of the voter turnout goes into the hundreds of thousands, and normally it's quite interesting watching the big cities. But the one place that has played a crucial role in the last couple of elections, not just the last elections of that led to PTI winning, but the last couple of elections, the so-called swing states of Pakistan, as they call it in the US, is the southern Punjab region. I call it the Saraiki swing states because that's where the language is spoken there. And historically, for instance, we saw that the GT road was supporting Nawaz Sharif, but it was the Saraiki belt that supported PTI, and then therefore PTI won the elections and came into the power. This time around, we have seen the vast majority of different parties forming in that region as well. The IPP is there, the newly formed PTI forward blocks are targeting that place, and they're already giving a lot of tickets in that area. People's Party has always had a foothold there. They have never been able to climb up towards central and northern Punjab. And once again, of course, PMLN has a couple of hotspots there. The city of Bahawalpur and Rahim Yar Khan have been supportive largely of PMLN, but once again, they seem to be falling towards PTI this time around. So I would definitely be keeping an eye out towards those places. Those places have a very large vote bank for JUIF, Jamaat Islami as well. And one very important thing that I would want to point out is even MQM has a presence there, and it is the only place in Pakistan where MQM has a presence outside of Karachi. So I mean, I don't say this because I'm from Bahawalpur myself, but I think historical records do reflect that it's quite an interesting place when it comes to elections. The toughest elections that we saw even last year, if you recall, were actually in the city of Multan, where PTI, People's Party, and PMLN were neck to neck in a lot of places, and that's where Shah Mahmood Qureshi, a lot of very senior PTI politicians came from. This time around as well, I would expect similar things to happen there.
All right, Barrister Safi, there's also the question of how, when we talk about political campaigning, how exactly will different political parties campaign? And of course, we just touched upon the use of AI as well, but I also want to talk about the use of social media and how we have been hearing how this is something that the PTI has been able to capitalize on, and so far we haven't really seen that sort of strength coming in from the other major political parties, including the PPP and PMLN. But it's been a while that we've been talking about this and hearing about this, and of course it's something that almost the whole world knows the power of, or how to sort of make use of in terms of their own advantage. So why is it that the other political parties seem to still be lacking in this apparent stronghold of PTI?
And Barrister Safi, if you can allow me as well, I mean, I would just give you one example. One of my friend from obviously Election Commission of Pakistan, he once said to me that almost in every constituency from 15 to 18,000 votes, it has increased in terms of the young voters. I mean, young voters, they have increased. And looking at the current circumstances and the as the youth, we are seeing that they are socially on social media very active, and we can say that they are politically very active on social media as well. What kind of pattern you are going to see, as Sana has mentioned the importance of social media and the youth as well?
Yeah, I don't obviously want to sit and predict as to what will happen. All political parties are setting up their social media wings, and all of them are trying to work on it. PTI has an advantage in the sense that they have been doing it for much longer. Asad Umar in PTI was in fact rewarded with a series of very good seats in Islamabad because he was heading the social media wing, and they've had contracts with some of the best companies in the world, not in Pakistan, in the world. But that's a different question. Now let's look at it from a legal and a jurisprudential perspective to try and understand the kind of threat this poses and the opportunity it presents. Now, the Election Commission and the Election Act 2017 puts a bar of 4 million rupees spending on National Assembly, 2 million on Provincial Assembly, but they have no way of seeing how much is being spent on social media. Social media is driven by money. It is pay per click. It is what we are inclined to think that it's a free form where youth can come and youth can go and put their perspective, and then when you look at what the perspective is, you can gauge how popular a political party is. That's not the case, and that has been proven to be not the case by the case of Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica is a company that was based in the in the UK, and has roots in Israel. It was proven that Cambridge Analytica rigged the elections of the United States of America, the world's foremost democracy, not the biggest because that's India, but the world's foremost democracy. The elections were rigged in the favor of a populist Donald Trump. This case went up, and it was decided by the US Supreme Court that Cambridge Analytica has in fact been using the data that people send it to send very targeted material to certain people that would brainwash them. So brainwashing through social media is happening. We all know for a fact that this is something that happens. Social media targets us. It can get into our subconscious mind. We are in front of our screens on an average of 3.5 to 4 hours every single day. The social media companies use that attention span and keep bombarding us with messages that are very personalized to us. So for instance, let's say I care about the environment. and PTI wants to capture me, and PTI knows that I have a search history of looking at the environment, they would start targeting specific things directed towards how PTI is going with the billion tree tsunami or something, until my mind starts to change and I start thinking that PTI is in fact the best option. And if PMLN
Barrister
decides to
Safi,
spend more,
don't you think that there is an element of obviously organic followers of it as well? Because the way you are obviously portraying it, it feels as if there is another Cambridge Analytica which is being hired by PTI, and they are the ones who are actually controlling our minds and controlling everything. And by the way, I think Cambridge Analytica was probed back in 2016, and they were not the ones who were involved in the American elections.
They have been shut down, by the way.
Yeah, they have been shut down. They have been shut down.
But just answer this. So, okay, so Faisal sir, of course there are organic followers. I'm not denying that there is. I'm not trying to suggest that it's insidious firms like Cambridge Analytica
and organic volunteers as well, IT experts, and
of course, you are on social media, Farrukh is, Sana is, I am, all of us are on social media, and all of us, I would like to think that we are not being rigged and we are not bots. So obviously that goes without saying that there are organic followers, but we need to understand that the way social media works is also to a degree mind control. We can get targeted. Even anyone who's on social media an organic follower can be brainwashed, a non-organic follower, a bot, can be created. Now, in the case of PTI,
we understand your point. Thank you very much, Barrister Safi, for joining us. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but thank you for being part of the debate and joining us. But if you wanted to add something for
I want to actually add many things, but I wanted to actually very quickly first, because we keep on dancing around the ideas, and particularly social media and AI. I have this luxury, because I've lived longer than most of you. I had the luxury of actually seeing things under the hood. I actually learned a language, Python, to learn how AI works. Similarly, when you talk about data analytics, I've kept on actually working on that. This term that I use, Sana, filter bubble, it doesn't have to be manipulated. What happens is that just go to YouTube. You have to understand how effective these algorithms now are. They are carving a space according to your choices, but then they are also predicting what you want to see, right?
True.
So what happens is that once I show interest in a political program of Pakistani origin, all of a sudden I am bombarded with many choices, and then what I do is there are certain that I reject, there are certain that I watch. What happens then is it creates a kind of filter bubble around you. It puts up a wall to hide the other reality. So we all are behind empathy walls, and we think that this is the popular view. Young people, for example, ask my daughters, they are mashallah young as well, they are Gen Z. If you ask them whom are you going to vote for, they will certainly reject all the major political parties. Perhaps go with someone like Jibran Nasir, right? So with that kind of a situation, you cannot say that youth are particularly voting for one party.
Right, absolutely. Right, we're almost out of time.
One-liner, transient democracy. I understand that Barrister Safi was quoting the Prime Minister. I'm neither the Prime Minister nor Barrister Safi. I'm practically nobody. But I just wanted to point out that I don't like this term. I have faith in a better term, that is aspiring democracy.
All right, that's great. Let's end on that note. Thank you, Farrukh. Thank you, Faisal, for joining us. That's all that we have time for. We'll see you tomorrow.